Okay, guys, just a very quick intro. I'm going to do a Bible study in a bit, but I wanted to test the microphone and let you know that one of the tools I'm having fun using is BibleGateway.com. They have BibleGateway.com has a free account, and you can go in and select any version you are happy with. I happen to have it on First Peter because in their study tools, or if you just go at the top and type devotionals after the .com, you will go into a study tool area of devotionals. And I'm working through one written by A.W. Tozer, so a very famous preacher. You can Google him. It's pretty good every day of the year. I was going to read it, but then I realized that's possibly copyright infringement. But I can certainly read from the Bible as it is on their site, so that's not a big deal. So yeah, First Peter, awesome. But I'll get back to you in a bit with the rest of today's Bible study. I'm not even sure what I'm going to cover. I may throw together a couple slides. I don't know. But recently, I've just kind of gone rogue. I've got actually the course that I'm in, a ministry communications course. So I'm finding it a struggle to study stuff that isn't directly related to the Bible. So, like my New Testament course that I went through, the whole New Testament, that was awesome, really good. And right now, in the last few weeks, or a couple weeks, I've gone through Judges, Ruth, and First and Second Samuel, and right now I'm within Kings, because there are I have read the whole Bible before, but I definitely, in terms of what I recall and what I tend to refer back to now that I'm mostly studying the New Testament recently, was Isaiah and things like Jeremiah or Joshua, obviously Genesis, but these are very common books that are quoted, even like Peter's first sermon, throwing down something from the prophet Joel. So there are a lot of close references, but I have trouble finding references from Judges or some of the other Old Testament stories of the prophets and the judges. But it was very rewarding going through that section, and so I think I'll try to pick something out of one of those books. But reworking the story of David has been really good, and it's revealing how I personally, when I get up something in my head, like in the inward impelling, I'm impelled inwardly to cover the Bible in chunks, like not just read a little passage and then unpack that and okay, that's good, I'll see you next week kind of thing. When I pick this up, I tend to go through, I don't pick it up unless I've got a couple of hours, or maybe at least a half an hour to get through a couple of chapters at least. So I'm finding that my favorite style of studying the Bible is in large chunks. And then if I'm really intrigued, I go back and I drill down, I guess, almost naively on the sections that really speak to me, or somehow touch my heart or something, or I relate to it, as in many of the writings of Paul. I'm like, most non-Jewish Christians tend to really enjoy the writings of Paul and the Pauline letters. Interesting. But I'm going to take a break. I made myself a mocha. I have about an hour before I'm allowed to get involved in something and not get called, well, a half hour actually, and not technically get called out for work. So I'm just going to hide for another hour. Actually, the only beauty of this time of year is that we do get a little downtime. I've had a little work this week, thank you God. So I want to put out a quick Bible study today. I'll try to keep it under an hour, but apparently in life, for me to be happy, either I'm on my motorcycle with a microphone and my helmet, or I'm at home with this crappy old monochrome microphone. So hopefully when I check this video, this little intro, this is my cut 2. This is take 2 of my intro, because my settings on my sound mix were picking up the traffic outside and my breathing, and it was really sensitive, so it was all garbled, distorted. But it's true that I need better gear if I'm going to do more of these. But I don't like begging on the internet. But if anybody's got a decent mic that they no longer use, a stereo mic, like something for a podcaster who no longer runs a podcast, consider shipping it to me. Thank you. All right, I'll be right back. Oh, thank God I got my sense of humor. I don't have any. Okay, and I'm back. Completely rogue, unscripted. Oh, and there's cars racing down the road. One of the interesting things about getting older, let's turn the microphone a little, is that I have to wear 2 different pairs of glasses. So I'm constantly switching. These are the ones I have on are for reading, and then I've got these more for computing. So interesting. But I've decided to go back to where I started, possibly a couple weeks ago, just rolling through the book of Judges. Now, I should probably give an overview here. The book of Judges takes place after Joshua. So we've got Moses. We're all quite familiar, well, I'd like to think we are quite familiar about all the things that Moses accomplished, bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. And then Joshua accomplished just so many victories for the Israelites. Now, this was a time after Joshua's death, and essentially it was a very it's a turbulent time in the history of the Israelites, and there was this cycle of disobedience and oppression and cries for help to God. And then somehow this system developed where they received deliverance through these charismatic leaders who were called judges. The central themes of this cycle, there were 7 judges throughout the book of Judges, and I might be wrong on this, but I kind of think of Samuel as kind of the last judge. But I'm probably wrong on that. Samuel's really considered a prophet, and even in Samuel's time there may have been some other character. I'd probably have to go deeper into the 1st and 2nd books of Samuel that I just read, literally, like through the past week. But back to Judges. It basically, what I saw was that with each successive judge, the judges themselves became a little more corrupt. So, and there was this cycle, where every time a judge died, the people simply went back to doing their own thing. In fact, it stated several times that the central, the point is hit like a hammer blow to the head. There was no king in Israel, and the people just did what they felt was right in their own heart or in their own eyes. Got a mocha here. Got a mocha up. Excuse me. So it's a really harsh, difficult time for the Israelites, and there's a lot of war. There's a lot of war, And for me personally, as a 20-something-year-old, when I would have had my, I guess my first real deep um, acceptance and belief, um, I don't know if it's a conversion, because I was baptized as a child and raised, sort of that way. I had exposure through my grandmother, but let's not turn this into a week-long video. But my grandma was the real driving force in my life. Nobody else could handle me, really. So, yeah, thanks, Grandma. So I knew where to go when my life really started to suck. So, this concept in the book of Judges of God's unwavering faithfulness to provide these leaders, and despite Israel's repeated unfaithfulness, really. One of the things that keeps happening is they were going back to worshiping the god of the Baals and idolatry. I've actually figured out how to say that word. I mean, it's not something that we think about that much in our time, but that's essentially it. The Ashtoreths, I think you say it, meaning the goddesses of Greece. They're worshipping all that again. Um, yeah, my impression as a lowly Alliance field minister is that I have a strong sense that it was Samuel who wrote the book of Judges and described all that, because his connection through David and Saul, it was Samuel who first anointed Saul, and David was the one that most people recall took out Goliath, and thus went from shepherd boy to famous harp player and attendant to the king himself, to the first king of Israel, Saul. So epic stories, and I'm getting way ahead of the book of Judges. But you know what? I'm just going to pull something. I got the book, got my reading glasses on. I have the Bible Gateway site up for anyone who just wants to get in there and read along. The first couple chapters, just from my own memory, where is he? The first judge is pretty good. So the Lord said initially, like, they wanted to go up against an enemy here. Now after the death of Joshua, who shall be first to go up against the Canaanites? And Judah and Simeon, these two brothers, go for it. And they win. And through that, they end up, Othniel. I'm looking for the introduction of Othniel. Turns out to be the first judge. And it was a good judge. So, let me go in my Bible and we'll, actually, wait, let me just, this is what happens when you go rogue and you don't have a script. Because I've probably already wasted 10-15 minutes. So I'm going to cut it here, let people take a break, go get a coffee, and go, oh my God, she's going to get into Judges, I better go get my Bible. I'll take a little break for editing, I'll take a little break myself, and then I'll get ready for a reading of maybe a chapter or two. I'll select what I want to talk about. But that's a pretty good quick overview of Judges and that whole area of the Bible. Who it deals with mostly. Okay, let's just cut there. Okay, so I'm going to start with Othniel, and I'll read out of here. I put it up on the screen so you can actually read it along if you want. But Judges 3:7. So the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God, and served the Baals and the Asherahs. Therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Cushan Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel served Cushan-Rishathaim 8 years. When the children of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the children of Israel, who delivered them. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war, and the Lord delivered Cushan-Rishathaim, the king of Mesopotamia, into his hand. And his hand prevailed over Cushan-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. Then he gathered to himself the people of Ammon and Amalek, went and defeated Israel. They took possession of the city of palms. So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, for 18 years. But then the children of Israel cried out to the Lord, raised up a deliverer for them, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. By him the children of Israel sent tribute to Eglon, the king of Moab. Now Ehud made himself a dagger. It was double-edged, and a cubit in length, and fastened under his clothes on his right thigh. So he brought the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man, and when he had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who had carried the tribute, but he himself turned back from the stone images that were at Gilgal. And he said, I have a secret message for you, O king. He said, keep silence. And all those who attended him went out from him. So Ehud came to him. Now he was sitting upstairs in his cool private chamber. Then Ehud said, I have messages from God for you. So he arose from his seat. Then Ehud reached out his left hand, took the dagger from his right thigh, and he thrust it into his belly. Even the hilt went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not draw the dagger out of his belly, and his entrails came out. Then Ehud went out through the porch and shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. When he had gone out, Eglon's servants came to look, and to their surprise the doors of the upper room were still locked. So they said, he is probably attending to his needs in the cool chamber. So they waited until they were embarrassed, and still he had not opened the doors of the upper room. Therefore they took the key and opened them, and there was their master, fallen dead on the floor. But Ehud had escaped while they delayed, and he passed beyond the stone images and escaped to Sirah. And it happened when he arrived that he blew the trumpet in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mountains, and he led them. Then he said to them, follow me, for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him, seized the fjords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross over. And at that time they killed about 10,000 men of Moab, all stout men of valor. Not a man escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. After that was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 men of the Philistines with an ox goad. That's like a spear they used to jab the ox to get them to move. So this guy killed 600 men of the Philistines with a wooden spear. Okay. So when Ehud was dead, the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. You see the theme here, the recurring theme, right from Joshua through Othniel, Ehud, and we go through all the famous. I should stop there for now, and just mention the next one after here. Yeah, Deborah, this is for the ladies. So in Judges 4, after Ehud dies, they go through the cycle. And they get oppressed for 20 years. So Ehud dies, they go into sinning, and I whacked the microphone. And so there's this guy that had 900 chariots of iron. He just defeats them, and they are oppressed by this Hazor. So the king, Jabin, the king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor, the commander of his army was Sisera, who dwelt in Harosheth, in Hagoyim. So Sisera is the guy who Deborah and another woman named Jael ends up. Yeah, I won't. Spoiler alert. I shouldn't spoil it. I should just ask you to read like 4, 5, and 6 of Judges. So for a moment, let's just stop there, and maybe I'll start babbling about Deborah. Let's see how long this section is. Yeah, Sisera. I'm gonna not read the whole. It's pretty long. It's like covers almost 2 chapters. So let's grab the bookmark. And again, I'm just flying off the cuff from my memory of reading it a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I think this guy, the Lord speaks to this guy, Elkanah, and the Lord tells Elkanah to go kick some butt for Israel. So obviously against Sisera, and Elkanah realizes the power in this prophetess Deborah. So she is the current. Like after Ehud dies, she becomes a judge. So Elkanah essentially would not do this, even though he knew the Lord is telling him to do this. He said, he asked Deborah to go with him, and I don't think it was an easy ask. And Deborah's quite clear with him, explaining, look, if I do this, if I go to war with you, everybody's going to know it was a woman that delivered the Israelites out of the hands of Sisera. So Elkanah humbles himself, and he says, whatever it takes to win. You know, this is what I discern from reading it. Forgive me if I'm, slightly incorrect on anything, but this is the sense that I get. That Elkanah was willing to sacrifice his own pride and his own kudos for, glory, for the sake of Israel. And good choice, because through Deborah and this spy, Jael, who ends up sleeping with Sisera. And this girl, Jael, ends up becoming a hero of the faith because she put a tent peg through Sisera's skull, pinned it to the ground. So I'm sorry if you thought this was a PG um, Bible study, but gee, I wonder why I don't really have a memory of a preacher teaching on Judges. But I mean, a lot of the books of the Old Testament are like nonstop war. If we really look at what Joshua did, that was kind of like nonstop war. Jericho, for example, bringing down the walls of a city. People die when things like that happen. um, yeah, so for me, that was very powerful. That even in the Old Testament, somebody like Deborah could be that influential in essentially saving yet again the entire group of Israel. So we have Gideon. Gideon is after Deborah, and also Samson. So famous. We read the stories of Samson. That's in Judges. Samson was a judge. And interesting about him is he gets Delilah. Samson and Delilah. So this rings a bell with some Christians, but they don't realize that Samson sacrificed his own life for Israel. She finally, through, kind of wearing him down, found out through him that his hair was the source of his godly strength. And so they cut off his hair, put him in prison, and while he's in prison, some of his hair, he starts to get his dreads back and get a little bit of hair going. He, I guess maybe it was Movember, I don't know, but he ends up going to trial. And he asks someone that, hey, I'm weak, can you help me lean against the pillar? So he ends up getting against the pillar while they're blah blah about the trial, and he ends up getting two hands. And he takes the entire temple to the ground, killing everyone and himself. So, yeah, the book of Judges. Pretty epic theme about how constantly over and over again it's written. My heart tells me it was Samuel who writes, during this time there was no king in Israel, and everyone just did what they felt was right in their own hearts or sight, something like that. And this occurs many times through this cycle of being redeemed by a judge and then judged, and when the judge dies they fall into sin and end up getting conquered and under slavery or under the oppression of another warring group. There's a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of it's really epic how the foreshadowing of finally, there's going to have to be a king of Israel. So David arrives finally, becomes king. And we all know much of the story of David, but I'll leave most of 1st and 2nd Samuel for hopefully another Bible study. These books are hard for people. Okay, this is why I tackled a bit of Judges today. These are traditionally, it's really reactionary, at least for me. I'm not a very, contrary to any hype someone might spew about me, I'm not a violent person. I've never had a mean temper. I'm a bit of an interesting character due to some minor handicapness, but I'm well versed, I'm intelligent, and I work really hard when I do work. So hopefully I can apply that to this and keep myself out of, the retaliatory mode, when we are oppressed in life, when, things don't go the way it seems. I often think about when I read Judges the other week. I skipped over chapter 1, but it discusses this thorn in the side concept. And at some point, Paul kind of prays to Jesus in one of his writings to remove this affliction. And Jesus says, no, my grace is just going to have to be sufficient. And I think somehow this kind of foreshadows how God deals with that. So if you repeatedly go into this sinning nature, this fallen nature, over and over again, being disobedient to God, God is going to test you in some way. Like he's basically delivered the Israelites 7 times. They've been oppressed and conquered by another group. Every time a judge dies, they just totally ditch everything that the judge stood for and was teaching them, and they just go and, willy-nilly. It sounds really similar to the very tumultuous and fallen state of our current world, really. I really didn't want to read these books in a way, but I realized that, sadly, they are actually a lot more relevant than some of the really nice books. There are books in the Bible that are just awesome, in terms of love and, some of the really good parts of Christianity that everyone sings hymns about. But we also, even as Christians, in terms of, yes, Jesus sort of releases our strict adherence to the old law, like we don't necessarily have to be circumcised. I was, but who cares? I mean, it was just a custom here in Canada at that time. Anybody born here at that time in a big city probably was. And they didn't ask, right? Nobody asked. So, yeah, I don't know how that goes, but Paul explains that very carefully. And I think Peter also understood it, but there was a moment where Peter and Paul had a disagreement because of where Peter wanted to sit when a bunch of Jews showed up. So basic Jewish Christians showed up at they all met together. And Peter suddenly didn't want to eat with the weird kids at lunch. So he went and ate with the more scholarly rule maker types. And Paul said, what are you doing? Like, you're with us. And he rebuked Peter. So, yeah, it's interesting how, the old rules, that's something that a lot of non-Bible people don't realize, that it's through the gospel and Jesus Christ that we can only be saved, because we're no better than the people God made to suffer because of their disobedience. We aren't any better than these people in the history of Israel. I mean, I'd like to think I'm awesome, but anybody that says he's not a sinner is pretty much sinning with his big mouth. So it's okay. Like, it's that true about every human, that we're not perfect. And we will never get away from that fallen state. And I don't know if this was all of God's plan, like to eventually have a savior, but this recurring theme, the fact that the judges rode donkeys, and then Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem shortly before he was crucified, he rode like a colt, like the most humble little animal ever. So I don't know, like, he's coming as a judge next time, apparently. So if we believe, and I do, into the Revelations, futurist, that there will be a time when another judge comes, and it's the judge. So I'm pulling these connections as I'm sitting here yammering about it, just letting it flow. There has to be some kind of foreshadowing, and I don't think it's like I don't think it's off the cuff that Jesus chose to ride a colt into Jerusalem. I think he was aware of his role as a judge eventually. Like, why would he not know that? He is God. Um, I know many people. I tend to speak like I'm talking to a non-Christian all the time, because I'm aware that as a lay minister, a lowly field minister, it might be a long shot, wild card, for me to actually get to the pulpit of a real church, physical church. But I want to take the Great Commission seriously, and many will be called. That's what it says. Young men will prophesy. Many will be called. And that's what's happening. I'm getting a lot of feedback from just the very, very few people I know. And although I didn't know this initially, when I blurt out that, I'm studying some ministry courses, they say, I've spent the last year kind of with all the craziness, I've gone back to reading my own Bible. So I'm hearing this kind of stuff a lot, and I'm hearing a lot of what Francis Chan preaches about and talks about in his book, Letters to the Church, where the younger crowd, I guess, teenagers and maybe 20-somethings or young, I'm talking just new adults, are starting to want a return to the sacred. And I see the church going in the wrong, many churches going in the wrong direction, where people are there for the show. They're there for the show and the social scene, and they're not really there for the core elements of communion. The real liturgical focal points. Except that a lot of churches spend so much time on scheduling things, activities and whatnot, which are awesome, but not at the expense of an actual sacred ceremony where you're doing something in remembrance of the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. So I find that, and the actual preaching from the book, like actually having some passages ready to go. I've been to sermons, not recently. The local church I go to is pretty hardcore. Like, they're into the reading of the Bible. In one Sunday, I'm covering several books of the Bible, and there's just way too many references that are belted out off the cuff for me to look up on the fly. I've got to write it down, go home. Oh my God, you hit that. So they cover a lot of ground, and they don't apologize for it. So it's good. It's kind of what I need in terms of, I not only need to further my own study, but I need all the help I can get, really, in terms of the prayer, the collective prayer power. But thank you for checking out Judges. Repetitive cycle in Judges of being led by an inspired person that has been, the angel of the Lord has identified as the judge. 7 judges. And then we get to Samuel, who I think of him as a judge, but everybody else just calls him a prophet. So, yeah. It really paves the way for Saul and David. And David, every Christian knows that is such an epic life that David led. So I can't wait to get into that in another study. But Judges, please, as homework, it won't take you that long to get through the whole book. Take a few days or a week and just hammer through the whole book of Judges, and that whole cycle will get it into your head exactly what happens when we don't have someone really good and ethical to direct us, and when our mentor dies, like my parents or whatever, suddenly I'm alone in life. I could have easily kept up with alcoholism. As a chef, as a resort chef and a ski bum and a mountain guide, I got into the binge pattern where it lasted a while because it was hard to tell. I was an alcoholic. It took a few years of a little too much of a good time would allow me to start becoming a human ATM machine, buying shots for my buddies. As soon as you don't drink, none of those people will want to hang around with you. So they're not really your friends. These are things you learn when you give up things that you shouldn't be doing. So yeah, I'm so horrible at drinking, I had to quit. Hats off to those that enjoy that. I don't do any other hard drugs or can't pop pills. With my cleft palate, I have to be very basic. Yeah, super basic. I'm allowed a tiny bit of medicinal herb, thank God, in Canada. And as per Genesis 1:11, there's no theological problem with using a plant. Again, my church alliance and my school that I go to online would hammer moderation into my thick skull. So I'm never partying. It's always in reverence to the Lord. Thank you for this beautiful plant that takes away a lot of my problems and allows me to function at a level where I think I'm 30 years old. So it just takes away some of the chronic spinal injuries I've had, jumping out of helicopters and falling down cliff faces. So, Book of Judges, an incredible read. Do it. I recommend it. Great way to spend a couple days at the cabin. So, a quick prayer. Lord, help deliver the enemies that attack any Christian in spiritual warfare by any means, including myself. I pray for the saints. I pray for believers. I pray for the church. Pray for me. Pray for the state of Israel and God's people to survive, flourish. And I pray that Jesus comes again soon so that I personally don't have to taste the sting of death. That might be a good reward for such a life of testing and trauma. So, maybe not the best of prayers, but wouldn't it be nice for me to go from here straight to heaven and not have to go in the ground? That would be interesting. If it came next week, for example. Hopefully I'm ready for that. Coming as a thief in the night. Be ready. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I'm laughing, but it's not going to be funny. It's going to be pretty incredible. Okay. Be safe. Amen.